Today we're going to learn how to do some unit conversions using charts. So length units such as millimeters, centimeters, meters or kilometers, right, they are your things that you measure on your ruler. Now often we know what something is in millimeters, but we need to find out what it is in centimeters or meters, for example. So we're going to go through how we change between all of them. Now this little chart that I've got here is super handy, right? And it allows you to go between your centimeters, your kilometers, your millimeters, and all those things by these little handy divide by 10, times by 10, times by 100, divide by 100, and so on. So let's use this chart to convert 5 centimeters to millimeters. So if I want to go from centimeters to millimeters, I use this times by 10. So I have my 5, and to go from centimeters to millimeters, I times by 10, and that would give me 50 millimeters. The next one, if I want to go to 300 meters to kilometers, I start with meters, and I want to go to kilometers. So I now divide by 1,000. So I have 300 divide by 1,000. I put all that in my calculator and I get 0.3 kilometers. And a little bit of a harder one is if I'm starting in kilometers and I want to get to centimeters, well, I need to go 1 to meters, and then I need to go from meters to centimeters straight after. So I'm going to start on 1, but then the very first thing I need to do is I need to times by 1,000, and that'll take me to meters. But then after that, I need a times by 100, so I go to centimeters. So this will take me to meters, and then the next 100 will take me down to centimeters. And overall, that's going to give me 100,000. Alright, so we can count up all the number of zeros I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, so I put in 5 zeros at the end. The next thing to look at are area units. So that was when we've calculated the area and we want to go from, say, kilometers squared to meters squared or something like that. All right, so how would we go about them? Well, it's a slightly different chart, but this one is just as important. All right, it's very similar to the last one, except all we're doing is we're squaring each of the values that we had. All right, so if we looked and compared this chart to the one on the screen earlier, it's the same thing, except we are squaring each of the values. So let's see what we would do. Right, much the same. So I have 5 centimeters squared to millimeters squared. So centimeters squared to millimeters squared, I'm going to do 5 times by 10 squared. So that squared goes with only the 10. And that's going to give me 500 millimeters squared. The next thing we want to do is we want to go from 350,000 and 210 meters squared to kilometers squared. So here I'm starting in kilometers, starting in meters squared, and I'm going to kilometers squared. So I need to divide by the 1,000 squared. So you go 350,210 divided by 1,000 squared. Put that in my calculator. I get 0.35021 kilometers squared. Just like we did with our regular length units, we can move down a few different spots as well with our area units. So 1 kilometer squared to centimeters squared, I have to do one of these, and then I need to go to the next one after that as well. So again, we go 1 times by the 1,000 squared times by the 100 squared, and you end up with a big number. It's something that looks like 1 times by 10 to the power of 10, right? Could also come up as 1e10, and what that means is we have 1 and we have 10 zeros. All right, so it's a big number. All right. our very last one, volume units. So this is when we're calculating our volume. So it's a little bit of a smaller chart. We tend to not use kilometers cubed because it's just very unlikely that we would get anything that is that big. So that would be a kilometer by kilometer by kilometer. And I can't think of anything that's a kilometer tall and also a kilometer wide. It might happen, but it's just not common. So we are looking mainly at millimeters cubed, centimeters cubed, and meters cubed for this one. So if I want to go from 5 centimeters cubed to millimeters cubed, again, we start at centimeters and we're going over to millimeters. So we times by 1,000. So we got 5 times by 1,000. And that is going to give us 5,000 millimeters cubed. The next one is 53,291. Right, we want to go from centimeters to meters cubed. So we're going in this direction, so we're going to divide by a million. So we've got 53291 divided by the 1 million. And we end up with 0.053 meters cubed. So if I want to go from 1.1 meters cubed to millimeters cubed, right, I can go down the 2 levels that I need to for this. So I would multiply by that, and then I would multiply again. So I go 1.1 times by, you have times by a million, times by 1,000. And that is going to be 11 followed by 8 zeros. Alright, so they're really big numbers, but it is possible. So the main thing here is knowing when to go between all of these different things. And it's important to look at the right chart. Alright, so don't use the length chart for your length units for your volume. Right? It won't work and you'll get an incorrect answer. So always look for, do I have that 3 at the top? Do I have a 2 at the top? Or do I have nothing at the top? Right, because depending on what you have there, depends on what chart to use. Right, so you'll always have these charts available to you. Use them. It'll be really, really handy.